One of the most common questions that we get is, how much does a high game fence cost? And it's an interesting question. It's one that's searched on the internet. There aren't great answers. And so in this video series, we're going to address that. And it's an answer that's composed of a number of variables, but surprisingly, high fence is not significantly more than a typical low fence because lots of the same materials and labor are used. It's just a little bit extra material. So we're going to answer that in this video series, and it's only a percentage more than low fence. And I'm going to tell you that percentage at the end of the series. You know, I tell people that one of the key facets of high game fence cost is the difficulty of putting the actual fence in and what makes your land interesting. Things like water features, creeks, streams, things that run through the fence, things like topographical contours, lots of highs and lows, things like rocks and cliffs. That's what makes our job tough. That's what makes it harder to access. It takes us longer to install. So those are the things that really affect cost. What makes your property interesting and great, makes our job tough, adds a little cost. So those things are, like I say, terrain, soil types, water, and accessibility. Those are the keys. Certain properties require more preparation to put a fence in than others. And the two key variables in that are land clearing and old fence removal. So the land clearing is where we have to make a right-of-way big enough to get our equipment and all the materials in to construct the new fence. Often that includes taking out an understory of smaller trees. We try to leave the larger, nicer trees. And the other variable is removing the old fence. Sometimes it's bound up in undergrowth. It can be difficult to remove. So those are the two key variables in preparation. I will say that many owners choose to leave the old fence in place. And I tell them that that's okay. They're going to save money. And the old fence is on the original property line. That's a good delineator to mark your old property line. The new fence may be a couple feet out, maybe even 3 feet out for us to get a straight line because a lot of the old fences are crooked. But what happens in between these two fences is interesting, and it's vegetative growth that comes in over time, and it doesn't hurt the new fence, but it does form a what I call a green screen. It's like a privacy screening, and in a lot of cases that's very desirable. So those are considerations that you may want to make. Another variable is the actual materials themselves. The base materials are always the same, which is an 8-foot high tensile woven mesh wire fence. That fence is put up on posts and T-posts. We only use galvanized pipe for our H-braces and our corners and our intermediate post. And we also use galvanized T-post. However, those do become variables. You can buy painted T-post, you can buy unpainted, non-galvanized pipe. It's a cheaper option, it's not a better option, but those do influence cost. Another cost modifier is black high fence. You've seen those, they look really nice. It's a much better look, much less industrial look, fades into the landscape. I would say it almost looks elegant, but anyway, it's a very nice looking fence. That does add cost to it, but it's a very nice upgrade. The way that water gaps influence the cost of a high game fence are really in size and quantity. And they're essentially sold by the square foot. So the more square footage required on a particular property, the higher the price. And conversely, the fewer, the lower the price. Gates are a critical factor in a high fence. The quantity, the quantity and the type of gate does influence cost. Obviously, the more gates that we install, the higher the cost. A typical gate is a 16-foot single swing gate, so it's got one hinge, one latch. It's pretty simple. From there, we can do doubles. So if you're going up to a 20-foot gate, we would do two 10-foot leaves. You can go to a 24-foot gate with two 12s. You do a 30-foot gate or a 32-foot gate similarly. And so it's another simple equation of more gates or more cost and fewer or less cost. Many projects and a lot of nice ranch entries need a great looking gate, and so Tejas has the ability to produce these gates in-house. We have a full fab shop. We help design logos. We cut those out here at our shop. We integrate that into your gate to make a really fantastic and custom looking entry. Another part of a gate system can be cattle guards, and cattle guards are used to keep animals from crossing an opening where a gate may be open. A gate may be open intentionally, or it may be left open unintentionally, and it's a belt and suspenders approach to keeping the animals in. A typical cattle guard is 8 feet in depth as you drive across it, 8 feet, and in width, just depends on the width of the gate, but for us it would be 16 feet. To contain wildlife that can jump more than 8 feet, we often do a double cattle guard. So it'll be 8 and another 8, so that gives us 16 feet of depth, and the width is the width of the gate, which is typically, once again, 16 feet. I've seen ranches that don't have gates and their animals don't come out. But we oftentimes put them in just as an extra precautionary layer to make sure that your valuable animals do stay in where they need to. And another component that you'll want to consider in costing is predator proofing. And owners span the gamut, just putting the fence up to really doing a Fort Knox of predator proofing. And so it depends on the project, it depends on the preferences, it depends on what we're trying to protect inside the fence. On the most simplistic fence, we have a strand of barbed wire at the bottom, a strand of barbed wire at the top. That's not going to do a lot in predator proofing. One layer up from that, we put welded wire mesh panel in any gaps underneath the fence. Tejas pretty much does that as a standard as well. And then an optional cost item would be to put predator apron on the outside of the fence. And what this does is helps prevent coyotes from digging in. We can give you more detail on those. And then the next step up from that is actually electric fencing at the bottom to keep coyotes from under digging. And we can add to that by putting electric fence midway and at the top to keep animals from jumping or climbing in, such as bobcats or mountain lions. Those things are very effective in the right scenarios. Another option to consider, and we do this for a number of properties, is what we call sight block. It's a screening mesh that's used on the fence that helps to obscure views in and out of the fence. It's used where landowners don't want others seeing inside the fence, maybe to keep people from spotlighting off a road, looking in, or it can be used where landowners don't want to see whatever's on the outside. Maybe it's an unkept property or something of that sort. Another great use of this is as a windbreak. So we often put it on northern exposure fences, and it gives animals a place to get out of the really cold north wind in the wintertime. So it works in all those scenarios, very effective. All right, so we're back to the question, what does high game fence cost? And as you can see, there are a lot of variables involved. We do give ballpark pricing, so if you want to give us a call, we can tell you an approximate price per mile. Today, we're in October of 2023, and I can tell you that number is $50,000 to $55,000 per mile. That number will change, so don't hold me to it, because, you know, especially since COVID, materials prices have been all over the board, mainly up, but of course all over the board, and labor is a big variable too. So we quote that number starting at 2 miles of fence. If it's less, you know, we lose some economies of scale. If it's more, we gain some economies of scale. So those things definitely do affect it as well. But the percentage that I referred to earlier is very interesting, and a typical high game fence job only costs 27% more than a typical low fence. And that's really interesting to a lot of people, because they have the impression, if they don't know, that it's cost maybe 2 or 3 times as much, but it's just not that much. And so for the utility of it, the protection of it, the value of it in resale, it ends up being a great bang for the buck. Well, we've covered a lot of ground in answering the question, what is the cost of high game fence? You know, the variables are characteristics of each individual property, what kind of water flows through that property, what kind of elevations are on that property, what kind of preparation that we need to do before we put the fence in, the types of materials that are selected, the predator proofing that's required, whether or not we're going to do site block, type and number of gates, all these things come into play. But bottom line is, every day we do estimates for people, just like you. We can look at our map. We use a subscription mapping software that shows us all these variables, and we can look at it and give you a really, really close estimate. And so I just encourage you to call us, send us over a map of your property. We can pull it up. We can model all this and give you a really good estimate. And after we give an estimate, if it's something that you want to go forward with, then we make a site visit. And in the site visit, we just make sure that all the variables that we assume based on the mapping software, or all the variables that we analyze, I should say, based on the mapping software, are correct. If we see any issues, or maybe it's something that's easier, or maybe it's something a little harder, we'll make those adjustments, and then we'll produce a proposal, and that's what we use to contract the work, and we'll get you on our schedule, and at that point, be ready to make it happen. Give us a call. We'd love to talk to you.